Hello and welcome to the Football New South Wales Extra Time podcast. My name is Gareth Long. I'm here at the start of day one at Valentine Sports Park for the 2025 Coaching Conference. Those who were here the last 2 years will be surprised to know that it's not boiling hot. It's a nice, calm, cool temperature. I'm lucky enough to be joined by Ian Buckman, who is the Academy Manager at Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club. Welcome, Ian.
Thanks, Gareth. Good to be here.
Well, look, we've got a challenge. We've got 20 minutes to come up with 3 tips to build a long-term development academy program. It's a long title, but I reckon we can get through it in 20 minutes.
We can do that. Yeah, we can do that for sure.
All right, Ian, look, I'm going to assume that part of your job is to produce players for the men's first team at Brighton. But what are the outcomes of a successful professional academy?
I think there's multiple outcomes now that we look for. Like you say, first and foremost, we're trying to produce players for the Premier League, which is getting harder and harder and tougher. But our number one priority is to produce players for the first team, playing what we would regard as the best league in the world. Outside of that, we're looking to produce players for the game, and we have a good record now. I think in the last decade we have 106 players that have gone professional at other clubs who have a good sort of ratio of players being successful of moving on if they need to or finding other careers. Outside of that, we look at our more of our holistic support. We have a big educational program, so we always sort of try and support our players with education through their schoolboy years. We offer A levels and degrees, so we've had a lot of players go on scholarships to the States and get good scholarships there as a result of the educational program. So there's there are main key areas, in terms of that football pathway or a development pathway or an educational pathway. For us, internally, then we have a large number of metrics about how we look at the game. We try and have 30% of minutes in the first team if we can, which is a lofty bar to try and reach, but we've done it on occasion. Like I say, particularly with the challenges. And then below that, we have different metrics around international youth appearances, how many loan minutes we have, how many loan appearances, and then various metrics around our teams and our squads and our departments. And we have 14 departments in the academy, and we have different performance metrics, as we would call it, for each. So we try and look at it over a much broader scale too.
Wow, that's really comprehensive. I think it's quite simplistic to just say producing people for the first team. It's a lot more detailed than that, clearly.
Yeah, players and people, and I think you're trying to produce outstanding footballers, but you're also trying to produce exceptional young people, and if we get that right, then hopefully there's a footballing or a non-footballing pathway for them, and essentially a platform for success in their lives.
And are you responsible for setting those targets, or does someone do those for you?
I try and set some that we can reach, for sure. No, the club kind of sort of set targets with us, and then across the various departments, we kind of set ourselves challenges. And I think one of the beauties of Brighton is you have the tradition of the club and the story of where we've come from, but also it's really ambitious. So we have Vision 2030, which I'll mention in some of the presentations we do this weekend, which is our targets for the next 5 years that have come from our chairman and from our deputy chairman. And, they're quite lofty ambitions to compete in the Champions League, to win the club's first major trophy, and for us as an academy to be ranked amongst the best in the world. So when you have that as a directive, you have to try and perform, I guess.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. Look, in our title, we've got some key words here. We've got long-term and we've got development.
Yeah.
So I thought we might explore that by looking at the other approach. So what would a short-term approach look like in an academy, in your view?
I think if you're short-term, I think probably winning in teams becomes the primary focus. I think if you're quite, I wouldn't say short-sighted, but if you have a sort of short-term view on it, then that can be the primary factors. I think from that, you probably look at playing the players that are for now, the players that are potentially earlier developers, the players that will give you success now. And I think we see that in some programs. For us, it is a long-term program, and essentially we're a decade-long development program, with boys coming in at under 9 and then arriving hopefully in the first team squad. So I think the short-term aspects are things that we're very conscious of and very wary that our biases around wanting to win now and our egos about wanting to win now are balanced off with the fact we make good long-term development decisions.
Yeah, lovely, lovely, and I think we'll probably explore some of those long-term aspects as we carry on this conversation. Thinking now of a little bit about kind of the what you do. What aspects of the player are you focusing on at Brighton and looking to develop?
We work quite through an age-specific program. So, like I say, they come into us from pre-academy from the age of 6. They essentially can sign for us at the age of 9. So we try and work very much on a fundamental base at those ages. Of course, you want it to be a fun, enjoyable environment at those ages in what we would call the foundation phase. For us, we have a concept called Brilliant Basics, which includes our ball mastery. It includes a technical base for the players and the fundamentals of the game, and we drive that all the way through the program. And Brilliant Basics kind of derive from when we were setting up the program, just looking for golden threads. Again, that long-term view to join us from top to bottom, and Brilliant Basics was a strap line that was used in the under 9s for ball mastery. It was on the final slide of our under 23 coach, as it was then, on his match presentation. Don't forget the Brilliant Basics. And quite coincidentally, not deliberate in any sense to join it up, but we decided to join that up and use that as the fundamentals of the program. And now it's grown into fundamental technical and physical actions in and out of possession. I was in Tony's presentation earlier, and we in there we were talking about the balance of attacking and defensive action. So we have attacking and defensive actions that we look at, and it can be around ball striking, basic techniques. It can be around movement and mechanics. So we package all that up for the players at the younger ages, in particular via ball mastery and some curve-type activities. As we progress through the phases, then we continue that focus on the fundamentals and that technical base being really, really strong, because ultimately to play in the Premier League, you have to have a good technical base and be able to look after the football, particularly at a possession-based club like ourselves.
I really like that, Ian. I think that's a good challenge for people listening. I'm going to assume most have the fundamental ball mastery stuff at the lower end of the academy, or the younger age of the academy, but the challenge is to keep the importance of that and progress that as they progress through even to the under 23s, I think you said.
Absolutely. Yeah, with our older groups now, we have individual coaches that work with our older groups, and so I think as you get to those older ages, you have the best, the basic techniques, we hope, by those ages. So you're really refining it in more of a position-specific sense. So our individual staff and our players would all have individual plans, and from that we can then sort of really get into the real detail of their movements and their actions on a positional sense to try and refine them at those ages. So yeah, 100% the technical focus remains all the way through the program.
All right, brilliant. Well, I reckon we're a little bit in, but I reckon we're ready to lock in tip 1, which you can change. You can paraphrase it for me if I make a hash of it. But I reckon tip 1 for building a long-term development academy program is focusing and developing brilliant basics.
Certainly for us, yeah, it would be a key component of what we do. So I think certainly that would be a good tip for us to share.
Awesome. Now you mentioned you started to talk about sort of individualizing the coaching and having coaches that focused on individual players. So we might look into that a little bit. But on that note, what is the balance in Brighton Academy between developing teams versus developing individuals? I'm sure it's not one or the other, but it must be some sort of balance. Or
yeah, very very much a balance. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's a balance of trying to get the two right. For us, when we developed the program, we actually had quite a team emphasis first, because we felt we had 10 teams in the program, potentially playing slightly differently at those stages, and we wanted to align it as rather 10 separate teams into one long-term development program. So we focused around the teams just to get common language and consistency in how we work. Once we had that in place, then very much now it's an individual focus, and we would have the strapline like IDPs drive the program. So IDPs being our individual development plans, so they literally drive the program from us now. We have 200 players in the system, and we essentially have 200 individual projects. So we're trying to balance that across the two. We have a way we want to play. I think that's important at a club. Like I say, we have a possession-based philosophy. We have an identity of how we want to win the ball back quickly. So it's important our players understand that, and I always like to look at it that we're building year on year rather than starting afresh at the start of a new season and trying to instill different language or new words or new concepts. Like we try and make sure it's progressive and consistent. So we have that sort of work with our teams, but fundamentally alongside that, our job, going back to your first question, is to get people in the Premier League, and so we have to have an individual focus, and hopefully we can develop those individuals within that team concept and balance the two.
And can you give us an insight into, I suppose, this structure or the logistics of the IDPs, i.e., what do they look like? Who does them? Is it co-created? Is it a particular coach? Just a bit of insight into
we'll
that.
if anyone's interested, they can come this afternoon because I'll show them. So that'll be good for this afternoon session. But essentially, at the younger ages, we have a pretty simple IDP where they have 5 key actions in possession, 5 key actions out of possession. They then have sort of physical and psychological areas that we look at generally across the program. But in essence, just key individual actions at those ages. When we get to 11v11, we have a wider profile that starts to link through, and our 11v11 profiles actually link our language and philosophy from their start point, which would be introduced at under 12, all the way through to our first team. So we're very aligned as a football club. So our profiles, again, work across that full spectrum in the program.
And who's responsible for those IDPs?
Primarily the staff at the younger ages will put them together. The players get a player-facing one, which is very simple, just with some key targets for them. And at the younger ages, we'll put that on their water bottles. We'll put that onto key rings, so they're very visible. At the older end, they're more aware of their IDPs, I would say. And as you touched upon earlier, we co-create with our older players. So at 16, 18, 21s, they will all be involved in that discussion with staff, set their own targets, and very much be part of that. And I think then you get that buy-in from the players that it's their program. It's the same for staff. You want them to feel invested in what they're doing. And if they've been a part of it, then certainly that pays dividends for us.
And how does the IDPs influence other parts of the program? I'm thinking obviously training, but I'm thinking match day, I'm thinking analysis. Does it influence the way that you do things?
Everything, yeah. I think we would look at it across the board. So our individual plans would have the backstory of the player. I think you're considering the player, their background, their personality. In terms of the departments, every department would work towards the IDP. So it's from an educational perspective and an off-pitch perspective. We have a performance and wellbeing department. So from a psychological perspective, player care, how they can support and create independence in that player. Then you get down to the football aspects, obviously, and we would look at that, from a technical and tactical and a physical perspective, obviously from a psychological perspective also, in terms of performance. So it really is impacted by all departments, and everybody contributes to that. And over the year, we'll have different meetings, different player audit meetings, when we'll go through every player individually, and we'll go through every department in terms of how they're contributing to that player.
Yeah, wow. Look, there's loads there, but I'm gonna try and simplify tip 2 of building a long-term development academy program. I'm just going to call it the importance of IDPs. Happy with that?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I say, we would say the IDPs drive the program, so yeah, certainly key part of what we do.
I'm changing it. Tip 2, IDPs drive the program.
Yeah.
Excellent, lovely. Again, look, it seems like talent development is a real complex and important space, and a word that keeps coming up is balance. So it's going to come up in my next question as well. Like, what's the balance between playing the Brighton way? You've already mentioned that you've got sort of aspects of the way that you play, versus preparing players for a range of styles, because you said there's 106 that have gone off to other clubs. How's that sort of balance?
It's a real challenge, actually, and we've had a big discussion over it over the last year. The Premier League can look very different to Championship, League One, League Two, just in terms of not necessarily the levels, but just some of the style and the pace at different stages. So for us to prepare people for the Premier League is one thing, and we have our philosophy of producing Brighton players for Brighton. So clearly we're focused on that. I think we also have a duty to produce players for the game, and we try and provide that balance via our program being quite principle based. So although we have quite a clear philosophy and clear identity, we'll allow the the teams to play in different formations. We'll allow them to defend set plays in a different manner, and we'll educate them to defend set plays in a different manner, whether that's zone or man for man, for example. So we actually have a lot of variety in the program. Yeah, I think we kind of work through it at when we're producing players at those levels. That we're trying to get that balance right to suit the variety in the game, different formations, different ways of playing, but ultimately the challenge we have is still make that look like a Brighton team. So if we play with a back three, we still want it to have the principles of a Brighton team. If it's a back four, similar. If we play with two holding midfield players, if we play with 1-6, again, the principles remain the same. So that's the key for us. We're very principle based, but we have a broad way of playing, and I think it's healthy for the staff as well, because if we just we're too prescriptive to the coaches about what they do, they're not really coaches, they're just facilitators, and we want them to coach, we want them to be able to develop their craft, and ultimately that variety seems to be paying dividends. Jack Hinchwood, who's the first player to come through our program, for example, all the way through our program from under 9 and playing the Premier League. He's played right back, he's played left back, he's played centre back, he's played 6, 8, 10, as you're well aware, Gav. And I think that comes from the fact he's a decent footballer, and hopefully that sort of grounding has come from the program.
Yeah, lovely. I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask whether that decision was driven by player development, but also coach development. It seems to suit both. I'd love an example around how you kind of track the principles are being developed, I guess, through matches. And I guess there's a progression of those principles. They're not going to, the 12s might not be doing all of it. So how do you sort of measure or track or keep an eye on that?
At the younger ages, we track primarily the individual actions. So the actions that I mentioned that are in the IDP. So we have those key actions in and out of possession, and we track those at the younger ages, and primarily not to really check on the kids or feedback on the kids, but primarily to make sure that we're providing enough experience and enough attempts for them at the things they need to learn. As they get older, then we have a lot more data, so we code the philosophy, we code the way we want to play. From that, we can code the individuals as well, and then we can track the individual actions, and that allows us to kind of benchmark across teams and players. But a huge amount of that would be behind the scenes, so the players wouldn't see too much of that at all. So it's not something where we want them chasing numbers and figures every week. They'll have 2 or 3 key insights on their IDP that we track and we allow them to see. But beyond that, there's a huge amount of data that we look at, which is purely staff-facing, that allows us to sort of, again, assess their development, assess their progress, and from a club perspective, compare and contrast when we're making decisions. But primarily with the objective stuff, it's to complement the subjective view. You still want that view and opinion of the coach, for sure.
You mentioned Jack Hinchelwood, and you rightly sort of pointed out his versatility. I'd love to know whether that's just because Jack was that type of player, that talented, or whether that was part of an intentional aspect of the program to enable players to experience all aspects of the playing philosophy. So I suppose what I'm asking is, what's Brighton's approach to positions across the phases?
I think Jack's one of those people who's just a really talented footballer. From his own admission, wouldn't be sort of blessed with outstanding physical qualities, but is really capable physically. Has an outstanding brain tactically, so is really versatile. I think through the program we try and make sure all our players have that grounding. So at the foundation phase, for example, from sort of 9 to 12s, all of our players would play in different positions. We would deliberately rotate positions. We play 4v4. Sometimes they'll play in goal. It's really quite a broad education for them. As they come through the youth development phase at 12 to 16, they'll still play in multiple positions. So midfield players might be starting to emerge, but they'll still play as a 6 and 8 and a 10. Wide players could play higher or deeper as a fullback. So we're still trying to get that sort of flexibility in their development, and it's good for them from an educational perspective to see different positions and learn different things about the game, I think. And then at the older ages, we refine that slightly, and of course it becomes more position focused and more position specific. But the players that come through our system generally have a good grounding and knowledge of the game. So, like I say, if they are required to adapt at first team level, we hope that we've prepared them for that.
Amazing. I think we're ready to lock in the third and final tip of building a long-term development academy program. And I think it's been able to articulate principles that underpin your playing philosophy. Is that accurate? Happy with that?
I'll use that, mate. That sounds very good. Yeah, yeah, I like that a lot.
All right. Well, look, I'm going to get you, if it's okay, Ian, to summarize the 3 tips of building a long-term development academy program. But I think what is great for people listening here is that I feel that all 3 of those tips are relevant to anybody working in the New South Wales space, whether that is a junior development program, whether that's a youth program, even if it's a grassroots club. So I think it was brilliant to take away these 3 points, but I'm going to let you summarise them.
Yeah, I think, like I say, when we're looking at our program, it's very long term, and essentially there's 3 threads that we tie together. There's that fundamental base and the brilliant basics, as we talk about, the individual development of the players, and the IDPs which genuinely drive our program now. It's very much an individual focus around the development of the young people and young footballers, and then that balance of our playing philosophy and our game model. And I think they're 3 things, as you say, that are intertwined, and we started to deliver separately initially, and now are very much intertwined in our session delivery and our coaching programs. And I think it would be beneficial for anybody really to sort of bring those into their own programs, and hopefully it helps develop the way they move things forward.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ian. We've drawn a bit of a crowd, so I think we might even get a bit of a round of applause. Let's see. Yes, we do. Ian, thank you very much for your time and everything that you've done this week. Thank you very much. Cheers.